Composition is the placement or arrangement of visual elements within an artwork. Visual elements are the things that make up your work, such as objects, people, or buildings. It's really important to understand that composition applies to all kinds of artwork, not just painting and drawing. You consider composition when creating a sculpture, taking a photograph, or when printmaking. Composition is one of the form elements of art, meaning it is one of the most important things to think about when creating artwork. When creating an artwork, you should consider how to use composition effectively. We're going to look at some different techniques and different elements of composition, and how specific composition techniques have been used in famous artworks. These are the elements of composition. These are key techniques you should be referencing when discussing how composition is used in your own work and the work of other artists. Unity. Do all the parts of the composition feel as if they belong together, or does something feel stuck on, awkwardly out of place? Balance. Balance is a sense that the artwork feels right and not heavy on one side. Having a symmetrical arrangement adds a sense of calm, whereas an asymmetrical arrangement creates a more dynamic feeling. An artwork that is not balanced creates a sense of unease. Movement. There are many ways to give a sense of movement in an artwork, such as the arrangement of objects, the position of figures, or the flow of a river. Rhythm. In much the same way music does, a piece of art can have a rhythm of underlying beat that leads your eye to view the artwork at a certain pace. Look for the large underlying shapes, squares, triangles, etc., and repeated colour. Focus or emphasis. The viewer's eye ultimately wants to rest on the most important thing or focal point in the artwork, otherwise the eye feels lost, wandering around in space. Contrast. An artwork with high contrast, a strong difference between dark and light, has a different feeling than an artwork with minimal contrast in light and dark. Contrast can also apply to shape, colour, size, texture, and type of line used. Pattern. A regular repetition of lines, shapes, colours, or tones in a composition. And proportion. How things fit together and relate to each other in terms of size and scale. The rule of thirds states that if you divide any composition into thirds, vertically and horizontally, then place the key elements of your image either along these lines or in the junctions, so where they meet with them, you'll achieve a more pleasing arrangement and more interesting and dynamic composition. Its origins go back to classical and Renaissance paintings. This painting on the right shows how the main characters are all placed on the upper dividing line, creating a dynamic arrangement of figures. Painters and artists use rule of thirds mostly for landscapes, but it also works for any subject matter, including still life, figures, and even portraits. The golden ratio, or golden spiral, is a mathematical ratio that's commonly found in nature. Closely related to the Fibonacci sequence, which you may know in your math lessons, the golden ratio describes a perfectly symmetrical relationship between two proportions. It can be used to create visually pleasing, organic-looking compositions in your artwork. During the Renaissance, Da Vinci used the proportions set forth by the golden ratio to construct his masterpieces. You can use leading lines to direct the viewer's eye into and around the artwork. Leading lines can be actual lines, such as lines of a fence or railroad, or they can be implied lines, such as a row of trees or a curve of stones or circles. In the image on the left, you can see that leading lines have been created by the diagonal lines of the windows and the dancers' bodies. In this self-portrait, Rembrandt composes his figure in the shape of a triangle. The triangular lines created by his figure help lead the viewer's eyes around the composition. You must always consider your composition when you're creating your artwork. You must always make sure as well that when annotating your work, you try to reference the appropriate and relevant keywords that we've talked about in this video. Thank you.